to find something from the Putney English department. I wonder what they're all doing. Oh, hello.
Shh.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
We're having our lunchtime read.
Oh, very sorry. I'll go.
Hello and welcome to our English department video blog, the first of many hopefully. We'll be using these to let you know from one week to the next various things that are going on or various people's thoughts on what they're reading, their favourite books, etc. So we thought we'd use this first video to talk about either books that have inspired us, our favourite reads, what we're reading at the moment, or who we're going to be dressing up as for World Book Day. So I'm not going to touch on who I'll be dressing up as, but I will say it's connected with the genre of magical realism, which I'm quite interested in, to say the least. Magical realism, if you're not used to it or familiar with it, is a genre where fantastical actions or people or creatures are presented in a very matter-of-fact, very everyday manner. And there's never any explanation for these unusual or fantastical elements within the story. It's just something that's expressed and accepted without much pause or hesitation. There are a number of writers whose names are synonymous with this style, one of them being Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982, a Colombian author who wrote this book here, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. So I thought I'd read a bit of this, and you can, from the very first moments of this novella, detect certain tropes of this style, which, as I said, the passing off as extraordinary matters in a very sort of matter-of-fact manner. So, on the day they were going to kill him, Santiago Nazar got up at 5:30 in the morning to wait for the boat the bishop was coming on. He had dreamed he was going through a grove of timber trees where a gentle drizzle was falling, and for an instant he was happy in his dream, but when he awoke he felt completely spattered with bird poo. He was always dreaming about trees, Placida Linero, his mother, told me 27 years later, recalling the details of that unpleasant Monday. The week before, he'd dreamed that he was alone in a tinfoil airplane and flying through the almond trees without bumping into anything, she told me. She had a well-earned reputation as an accurate interpreter of other people's dreams, provided they were told to her before eating. But she hadn't noticed any ominous augury in those two dreams of her sons, or in the other dreams of trees he'd told her about on the mornings preceding his death. Nor did Santiago Nazar recognise the omen. He had slept little and poorly without getting undressed, and he woke up with a headache and a sediment of copper stirrup on his palate, and he interpreted them as the natural havoc of the wedding revels that had gone on until after midnight. Furthermore, all the many people he ran into after leaving his house at 6:05 until he was carved up like a pig an hour later, remembered him as being a little sleepy but in a good mood, and he remarked to all of them in a casual way that it was a very beautiful day. No one was certain if he was referring to the state of the weather. Many people coincided in recalling that it was a radiant morning with a sea breeze coming in through the banana groves, as was to be expected in a fine February of that period. So it's quite a subtle style at times where you just have to reread what you've just read to make sure you have read it in the right manner. Quite similar to Kafka in the opening of Metamorphosis, you might say. And this is a translation. Salman Rushdie is perhaps the most famous writer of magical realism in English. And again, a wonderful collection of novels using frame narratives and various subplots and intertextual references that really bring the work alive. So I won't go on any more, but I do encourage you, if you've not done previously, to look into magical realism as a genre that might interest you.
So I'm making things easy for myself by coming to World Book Day dressed as a school teacher. But this is a very special school teacher, and she's called Miss Jean Brodie, and she features in this wonderful book by Muriel Spark called The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and it was written in the early 30s, and it's about a rather eccentric Edinburgh school teacher who has her own views on what should be taught, and she has her own clique of girls that she has specially selected from the school, who she she invites to her house. She does all sorts of extracurricular kind of activities. She talks to them about everything from sex to fascism, which she's rather keen on, and she also pursues various quite interesting love affairs, which her students are kind of very keen to observe. One is with the one-armed art teacher, who she's really madly in love with, but can't have an affair with because he's married with 6 children. So instead she pursues a sort of separate affair with the music teacher, who is not so interesting, and we learn has a long body and short legs, but is otherwise acceptable because he's free. Anyway, I have to say that when I said to Mrs. Dias that I was going to come as Miss Jean Brodie, she didn't miss a beat, and she said, "Oh, no change there then." But obviously I am completely different from Miss Jean Brodie, and I'm not going to do a Scottish accent, but I am going to read the opening of the book, and I hope it gives you a flavour of it. And it's only a short book, it's a good read. My daughter's just read it, and she said Jean Brodie is an icon after she'd read it. So anyway, here's the opening section. The boys, as they talked to the girls from Marcia Blaine's school, stood on the far side of their bicycles holding the handlebars, which established a protective fence of bicycle between the sexes, and the impression that at any moment the boys were likely to be away. The girls could not take off their Panama hats because this was not far from the school gates, and hatlessness was an offence. Please remember, Putney girls. Certain departures from the proper set of the hat on the head were overlooked in the case of 4th form girls and upwards, so long as nobody wore their hat at an angle. The 5 girls standing very close to each other because of the boys wore their hats each with a definite difference. These girls formed the Brodie set. That was what they had been called even before the headmistress had given them the name in scorn, when they had moved from the junior to the senior school at the age of 12. At that time, they had been immediately recognisable as Miss Brodie's pupils, being vastly informed on a lot of subjects irrelevant to the authorised curriculum, as the headmistress said, and useless to the school as a school. These girls were discovered to have heard of the Buckmanites and Mussolini, the Italian Renaissance painters, the advantages to the skin of cleansing cream and witch hazel over honest soap and water, and the word menage. Is that menstruation or?
It's menage a trois, I think.
No, menage. Or is it menopause? It's one or the other.
I don't know.
The interior decoration of the London house of the author of Winnie the Pooh had been described to them, as had the love lives of Charlotte Bronte and of Miss Brodie herself. They were aware of the existence of Einstein and the arguments of those who considered the Bible to be untrue. They knew the rudiments of astrology, but not the date of the Battle of Flodden or the capital of Finland. All of the Brodie set, save one, counted on its fingers, as had Miss Brodie, with accurate results, more or less. Anyway, I have got a couple of quotes which are really very, very famous quotes from this book, and I shall be sporting them as badges tomorrow. So here they are. The first one is absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you can see that. So Miss Brodie is constantly saying that she is in her prime. It's called The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and she means that she is at the absolute best phase of her life, and nothing could be better, and the answer to any sort of problem is or challenge is I'm in my prime. So that's a really excellent quote to use at any stage of your life. And then this is a brilliant one, and I thought was particularly good for a teacher at Putney High School, and this is her saying, which is, and I'm going to attempt to say this in an Edinburgh accent, "My girls, à la crème de la crème." And that means that the Brodie set they're not only the cream, they are the cream of the cream. They are the absolute best girls ever in the world, and they're going to go and conquer the world. Hopefully not like Mussolini, her great hero. But anyway, so look out for me, dressed as Miss Brodie, and do read the book. Enjoy World Book Day.
Son of darkness, he added, turning to Queequeg, art thou at present in communion with any Christian church? Why, said I, he's a member of the First Congregational Church. Here be it said that many tattooed savages sailing in Nantucket ships had at least come to be converted into the churches. First Congregational Church? Cried Bildad. What? What that worships in Deacon Deuteronomy Coleman's meeting house? How long hath he been a member? Not very long, I guess, young man. No, said Peleg. He hasn't been baptized right either, or it would have washed some of that devil's blue off his face. Do tell now, is this Philistine a regular member? I don't know anything about Deacon Deuteronomy or this meeting, said I. All I know is that Queequeg here is a born member of the First Congregational Church. He's a deacon himself, Queequeg is. Young man, said Bildad sternly, thou art skylarking with me. Explain thyself, thou young Hittite. What church dost thou mean? Answer me. Finding myself thus hard pushed, I replied, I mean, sir, the same ancient Catholic church to which you and I and Captain Peleg here and Queequeg here and all of us and every mother's son and soul of us belong, the great and everlasting first congregation of this whole worshipping world. We all belong to that, only some of us cherish some queer crotchets, no way touching the grand belief. In that we all join hands. Splice, thou meanst, splice hands, cried Peleg, drawing near. Young man, you'd better ship for a missionary. I never heard a better sermon. Come aboard, no, never mind about the papers. That is a passage from Herman Melville's Moby Dick, which I think is one of the most enjoyable and loopy books ever written. That is a common common philosophical position to take on this. But I find that passage really moving because it was written in the late 19th century, and in it we see Ishmael, the main character of Moby Dick, expressing how the tattooed savage, as they put it, this Polynesian sailor, this harpooner, Queequeg, is, despite his appearance, nonetheless as human as anyone else and belongs on the great ship that symbolises America, that symbolises humanity. And I always find it particularly moving that Herman Melville had such an inclusive way of viewing the world at this point in the late 19th century. So I thoroughly recommend Moby Dick. It is deeply, deeply strange. We won't probably be studying it in Putney anytime soon, but I once read it all through the night, all 600 pages of it, so I urge you to do so too.